Hi everybody, my name is Casey Scruggs. Welcome to my session, Adopting an Active Update Cycle. Now, first off, before we get into anything, I wanted to say that this is my first time presenting, and last night my wife said you should take a picture of yourself behind the screen or in front of the screen to, kind of capture the moment. So I'm going to do that real quick. See if I can get this. Maybe that. Oh, almost. That's close enough. All right, and I also wanted to do, are y'all okay if I do a group selfie? Thank you. Let's flip around. Awesome. Thank you all. All right, let's see. Oh, right. So one thing, I theoretically am going to use my phone, yes, as my clicker. If it stops working, somebody thankfully has left an actual clicker over here to make use of. All right, so yes, I am Casey Scruggs, and at the end of the presentation, I'll have a QR code that goes to the slides and all of the links, resources that I mentioned throughout this. Also, if you are in the Dean's One channel or whatever in Slack and it links to the notes, I went ahead and put the link to where the slides resources page is. And it also, the QR code, I didn't mean to hijack, that it's my own. There's the feedback QR code. So it's different, but on the resources page, I put a link to the feedback. So please also give me your feedback. I appreciate it. All right. And if you have any questions throughout, such as, dear God, why are you doing that? Please feel free to interrupt me. So, about me. I'm a systems engineer at Western Kentucky University, and I'll get into my background in a little bit. So first and foremost, I will say that I am not a coder. I tend to think of myself as a consumer, end user primarily. Sometimes I'm a power user. I can look at somebody else's code and sometimes figure out what they're doing with it and can take it and make it to work for our environment. And on top of that, the Mac admins community is amazing. It's through so many of you all and the others all around, and those that aren't here, that I've been able to do what I do. Truly, you all are giants, and I get to benefit by standing on your shoulders. So thank you. Similarly, Slack, Mastodon, I don't really say much, but I'm on there. So you can at me if you ever so desire. I will respond. And on Mastodon, I maybe post one or two things, but I generally just retweet whatever anybody else says that I follow that I like. So, but you can find me on there as well. So the subtitle of this is Always Changing is Not Always Improving. Never changing is getting worse. And that's something that I have learned firsthand, especially the always changing, not always improving part. When I first got into it, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but there was a whole lot of things I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And it wasn't necessarily the best user experience. Thankfully, nothing catastrophic had happened, but you don't necessarily have to do everything all at once, is a big lesson I've learned. And I will also say that as I go through these things, they are what we have figured out at our institution that works for our environment. It's a little squeaky. It works for us. It may not work for you all, and that's okay. You will have to figure that out as you go. But if you have recommendations for doing things better, let me know. I'm all ears. So. We'll go through where I was when I first stepped into the role, as well as where we are, the group, the team that I work with, and how we got there, as well as the lessons that we've learned along the way. So, where I was. I started my career at Western, and just the career as a whole. First real job was at Western, working in our help desk. And I was there for 10 years. And I'll say that's probably the first lesson that I would recommend for you to learn, is to keep in mind the folks that support the things that you do. They are the first line of contact. If something goes wonky, they need to already be aware of it. And it's good to partner with them ahead of time. Keep them in the loop and have them testing things for you. Another thing is, if you have moved into your role from a previous area in the same org, you also want to kind of protect yourself, though. It's very easy for that old area to say, hey, could you do this as a special favor? You need to have a firewall in between you and that. Still, you want to be mindful of them as a whole, but not play favoritism. After that, I moved into the desktop support group, as it was called at that time at least, being an on-site technician with a focus on Macs. And I was in that position for about 3 years, and that time really laid the foundation for collaborating on managing Macs. The Mac admin person I got to partner with. It was him and me that focused on Macs, really. But I could make suggestions to him, and he would bounce ideas off of me. We really got to collaborate a whole lot, and that has been very helpful. It was January of 2019 when we implemented our MDM solution. And then later that year, he moved on to a new company, and I stepped into that role in September of 2019. And at that point, I had not had any direct experience adminning. Thankfully, he left it in a fantastic position. Our setup and management processes just kept working for a really long time. I was impressed and grateful for how he did things. When I moved into the position, my boss, pretty early into it, kind of pulled me aside and said, hey, fake it till you make it. It'll be okay. I was a little intimidated, and I was like, but I want to do a good thing. I want to do a good job. But he had faith in me and knew that we'd get through it. And coincidentally, in September 2019, it was just a few months later, right, when the pandemic hit and things shut down and we went home, and I was sitting in front of my computer wondering what to do. And then I remembered there's years and years worth of Mac admin sessions that I could watch. So I did, and I learned a whole lot of stuff. And somewhere in 2020, I realized I didn't have to fake it anymore. It was pretty awesome in an otherwise not awesome situation. All right, so what was our setup when I stepped into that role? Practically none of our Macs were DEP'd or now ADE. If they were, it was mostly by accident during our purchasing process. Our school had one store that sold both to students for personal use as well as to the university for official university use. And because of money things, they put all the sales through one Apple account, and so everything was considered like personal devices. Yeah, and that wasn't that big of a deal at that time. It later, became a little more of a thing, but we'll get into that. All right, so all of our Western-owned fleet were prepared via MDS, and back then, all the things were bound to AD, so we would have a hidden admin account that got installed during the MDS setup process, but our first user would log in through their AD credentials, and we would then give them admin rights and would tell them, okay, if somebody else uses this and they need admin capabilities, here's how you do it. As of September of 2019, there was just a small amount of MDM enrolled Macs. We had started in January, and we were enrolling them as they came to us. If it was a new machine, it'd get enrolled. If it was a machine that got a little wonky and needed to be erased and reconfigured, it would get enrolled at that time. But we didn't do any retroactive enrollments. So we had a small amount of Macs enrolled. And I'll say as well, we're now at the point where we've got just about everything enrolled, and I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but we have around 1,200 Macs total. At the time of September, I think we had about 300 lab Macs enrolled and maybe 150 of employee use Macs. Also, as we were setting up those machines or resetting up, we would facilitate data transfers and backups when needed, using that hidden admin account generally. And because of that, we would also discourage File Vault to be set up at that time. For app management, we had Monkey just on-prem for access. And once we had finally put all the things together and prepared it for our users, we would tell them, here's where you go to keep the machine up to date. And we would hope that they actually would. We weren't really sure if they would, and the MDM, could maybe have it updated, but still don't know for certain if it actually would. So a lot of times it was like, I've worked on you, and I hope you do the things and you stay up to date. So, where are we now? As of a few days ago, all of our Macs, new Macs, are ADE enrolled, or if for some reason things have gotten a little out of whack with the order process, thankfully we have configurator for iPhone, right? So in 2020, our store actually got third-partied out, and at that time, our Apple reps were like, hey, now's a really good time to get that separation. And so now anything that is purchased with Western money for Western use will have its own Western Apple account. So that was a big help for how we set up our Macs now. Because of that, we don't really use MDS, or at least on the employee side. The lab side still uses it a little bit for preparing Macs. All of our user accounts are now local accounts and with standard admin rights. We are syncing the password with the Kerberos Active Directory extension, and we're using the Privileges app for when folks need to give themselves admin rights temporarily. Okay, yeah, this is where I jumped ahead of myself a little bit. Nearly our entire fleet is enrolled in the MDM now. We're sitting at almost 1,200 devices. There's still occasionally where I'll walk somewhere and I'll see a Mac and I go, I know you're not in our system, but you might be sometime. But we're pretty close to full enrollment. Data transfers and backups. We've migrated over to OneDrive. We have that for everybody. And if folks don't like OneDrive, we say that's fine, but it's at your discretion to figure out how to handle your data from now on. And I've got an asterisk there to remind me to look at my notes to say that initially when we implemented OneDrive, I was using the App Store version, the Mac App Store version of OneDrive, and I had come across a script that would change it would make a symlink for like desktop and documents and stuff to redirect that stuff to a OneDrive location. I was like, wow, I can do more than that. I'm gonna do desktop, documents, downloads, music, movies, photos. Let's do all the things. That's one of those bad implementations. I didn't really think about it. I mean, I tested it, don't get me wrong. I did test it on my computer, but I didn't have that big of a photo library. I soon realized a lot of our users do, and OneDrive does not like database files with really long file names and what it would consider weird characters. So after like a week or two of getting many tickets that somebody can't open their photos library, I was like, okay, lesson learned. Let's not do that. Let's pull it back a little bit. And now, I think it was at least 2023, maybe 2022. when Microsoft released the KFM version, the equivalent to the Windows side, right, where it has the backup built into OneDrive itself for desktop and documents, and just that, for good reason. It was soon after they released it wide that I switched us over to that version instead of the App Store version. And partly because we don't need to do the data backups and just overall much better security, File Vault is now enabled, enforced, recommended, required during the initial setup. And we make use of Installator for app management, initial installation of those apps, and the occasional update to them, like Chrome being weekly or whatever, right? And as of just literally June, towards the end of June, I put into place App Auto Patch. So still have some that are Installator only, and App Auto Patch is from new machines going forward. And for OS updates, Graham Pugh has a script out there for Nice Updater that I make use of. There was a session on Nudge, fantastic. There's also Super, another fantastic option for users to be reminded or enforced to keep their computer updated. Nice Updater I like for us. It's kind of simple in what it does, and that's all I needed. All right, GitHub apps and scripts that we have in place. There's the support app, very handy, especially for the help desk folks when they're getting that call. What's your computer serial number or something like that. There's a little icon that sits in the tray that they can click on and get all kinds of helpful information very quickly. Privileges and privileges demoter is a script that runs, I think by default it's every 15 minutes or so. It says, is the user an admin account? Yes. Then display a pop-up asking if they still need admin rights. And if they don't respond within 2 minutes, then they'll get dropped down to a standard user account automatically. Or they can click no to downgrade themselves. If they click yes, then it renews for another 15 minutes. DocUtil and SetDoc for that initial setup to clean out the doc. DocUtil has been around forever and is fantastic. SetDoc is kind of an add-on to it, I guess, that essentially will run DocUtil via script or command from the MDM. You don't necessarily have to have everything, like the DocUtil doesn't have to live on the computer itself. SetDoc kind of takes care of it for you, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've looked at it. I know I use it, but I forget exactly how I use it. But there will be links for it that, and I think it's Misha blogged about it, and so there's a link to SetDoc to the blog that he wrote about how to configure it. All right, Installator and App Auto Patch mentioned already. Installator, Big Mac admin Trevor did a whole thing about Installator this a couple of days ago, and App Auto Patch is based off of it. It is kind of self-contained Installator, but it can be configured to run automatically. I think it's every 3 days or something like that. Or maybe it's every 24 hours. I forget. But it's configured to do it one way, and you can go in and manually change it. And of course, Swift Dialog, which I think Trevor also had talked about quite a bit. How many folks are familiar with or use Swift Dialog already? A decent amount. All right. Other folks, you probably will. It is pretty impressive. And do I think I have it? Yeah, it's the next slide. So it is very flexible in what it can do. So this is Nice Updater. You just have the little script, whatever. You push it out, and it pops up a message that says, "Hey, you got a OS update that you need to install. Defer for 24 hours, or go ahead and install it now." Trevor, Second Sun Consulting, they have one called Refresh that will just pop up a reminder that says, you hadn't restarted your computer in 14 days, 4 months, whatever. You should do that now. As I said, I am not a coder, but Swift Dialog is simple, where you can take something like this, a JSON file, I think, or that's a shell script, and plug it in to a JSON file. I think that's what this section is. Instead of an actual separate JSON file, that's right, I have it do just a command. All the things I want the message to display is in a single line there. That's right. Okay. Or a JSON file. It will input that if you have that stored separately. So it will take something like that and make it look like this instead. So one of the things that we have, being a university, is a guest network, right? Like we have here. And a lot of our employees, for some reason, will have their device connect to guest. So we have this script check if the WKU guest SSID is in use. And if it is, it'll pop up this message that says, "You're on guest. You can't do a whole lot with that. You might want to change it." And if they click yes, let's change it, it pops up system settings to the Wi-Fi connection area so they can change it themselves. Another thing that we use Swift Dialog with is onboarding guide. I've set it up so that if we still do handoff for our users, we get the machine first, we set them up, and then we let them know that it's ready for use, or we'll bring it to them. But there's times when they work remotely, or they're just not available, and we can't sit down with them to go through the use of the machine. We've got this guide, got a YouTube video embedded where they can watch it, and it shows them what to click and what to do to finish setup, like enabling OneDrive and Outlook, getting that configured. I have as an alternative a text guide, so they can choose that instead of watching the video, and they can go through each tutorial one screen at a time. So, how did we get here? Document, document, document. right now, think about what you are doing and the folks that you work with. Do they know what you're doing? And do you have it documented how you do it? Also think about the users that you support. Do they know what you're doing? I strongly recommend use something to keep track of how you configure your fleet. One suggestion, and one thing that we use quite a bit, knowledge-based articles. So, do you have Confluence or a wiki, something similar for a knowledge-sharing platform? Now, let's step aside from work things altogether for a moment. How many of you are familiar with Plex? All right, most everybody, that's good. So you know what it's for, what purpose it serves. A couple years ago, I came across a plug-in of sorts. At that time, it was called Plex Meta Manager. It's been rebranded as Comida. So if you're familiar with Plex, I would recommend checking out Comida to make use of some of the functions it has. In short, Plex is just a media library, media management. And Comida helps you categorize that stuff in more ways than Plex natively supports. When I stumbled across it, I was impressed with what it does, but I was even more impressed with the documentation for it. It is spectacular. So, for work purposes, I recommend checking out Comida's documentation site just to get some inspiration for how to do things. If you're new to the knowledge base concept, the person or persons, whoever manages Comida, absolutely amazing with their documentation. Really, really impressive. They can take somebody that does not know coding and it actually will walk that person through some somewhat intricate code, and it details what it's doing in the documentation, and it's done in a very elegant way. Big fan, big fan. Okay. Training. You know, maybe your org needs training documentation for how to do things. What we have for our ticketing system, it includes KB articles, but the ticketing system itself is a pretty robust system. So for new IT folks, they have to go through training before they can actually start using the ticketing system. And if you're looking for an example of training content, Apple's IT training site is pretty good. I went through it in October. The Mac security and compliance training section, it is done very well. The entire training course is, but I specifically went through the security and compliance section and was very impressed. Learned a lot of things from it. Even though I had done some of the security and compliance stuff before, the way they laid it out was very helpful. So I recommend looking at it as well for some inspiration. Proactive communication. So you want to be upfront and transparent with your users, your clients, your customers, your coworkers, whatever you may call them. You want to get to know those folks and have them get to know you. So maybe that means you send out emails occasionally. Maybe you send a newsletter to them. That's what I do. Every quarter that says, hey, here's some things that we worked on over the summer. Here's some things that are going to happen in the fall. And just give them some awareness about what's happening. Or maybe you do an onboarding guide like that video. Maybe you have Slack or Teams or something that they can reach out to you on. Depends upon your user base, if that would be abused or not. So tell them what you're going to do and why. And if you need to be vague, that's okay too. I think it was a couple years ago, Tom Bridge, one of the campfire sessions, did the three paragons of IT. Absolutely phenomenal session. I watch it at least every year, a couple times a year, sometimes even, to remind me of why I do what I do. But one of the things that he included in that was a recommendation to document your provisioning process and the onboarding of your devices. And when Tom Bridge recommends doing something, you generally ought to do it. So we have internal documentation that is for me, fellow engineers and the folks that set up the computers, as well as external documentation that our end users can see, get kind of a, hopefully easier view of how their computer is being configured. So, let's see. The Mac provisioning process, that one is internal. The apps and settings installed during initial setup and settings managed by WKU ITS, those two are external. So that's what I've come up with. It should be step by step, the provisioning process especially, step by step, everything that we do before we hand the computer off to the user. That took a long time to write. A long time, like a year and a half or something to write. So, when you're putting this documentation together, you don't have to do it all at once. Give yourself time. You are worth it. Your sanity is worth it. Don't get overwhelmed by documenting that stuff. But set aside some time every day, every week, once a month, something that is just dedicated to putting together what you do. In addition to documentation, you want to test. And I have test, 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 test. My recommendation is to test more than you document, actually, because generally you're going to test some things and it's not going to work out. You don't necessarily want to document those things that don't pan out, at least not in full detail. You might want to make some notes, of course, but for actual implementation, you'll pull back a little bit on the documentation. This is the way I do it. First, me. So I've got a test machine that's generally a fresh image and just kind of gives a proof of concept. How does this thing work? And simultaneously, I also put the settings on my daily driver to see how it would work for a in-use machine. And once I have both of those behaving as desired, I'll move on to my test group of other IT folks that are also Mac users. Push it out to them, make sure that they're good. Now, for you all, we don't have it set up in our environment, so it might be something for you to have early adopters opt into some new features. Beyond that, you may want to have targeted areas, little groups that are some, Mac users that you can make sure it works a little wider before you do the full wide release for your entire fleet. This sort of list I've seen before, I know, but it's something that even though I had seen it, I hadn't really thought about doing it, until I had a meeting with my coworkers, and one of them said to me, "Casey, you keep making changes, but we don't have time to get familiar with everything that's different." It was a little humbling. He was right. I was doing a disservice to them. I had documented the changes I was going to do. I had tested it on myself. And in our team chat, I had said, "Hey, here's the new docs about the thing that I just did." But if they weren't in that chat at that moment, they weren't going to see it. It'd scroll by. So when they're going to set up a Mac for somebody, they get some new pop-up on the screen, and the user's like, "What's that?" "I'm not sure. I hadn't seen it before." So, lessons learned: partner with your coworkers, bond and create a trust, meet with them regularly, tell them what you're thinking about doing, get them to buy in or tell you why it's a bad idea. Once you've tested it a little bit, ask yourself, and that brain trust, is this right for our environment? Is it right for our users? And just so you know, there's going to be times when the answer is no. You tested it, you like it, but it isn't really necessary. Even though you really, really, really want to do something, it doesn't mean that it's right. Something to consider as you are testing these things. Do you implement them retroactively so that your entire fleet gets it all at once? Do you do a this point forward assignment so that like App Auto Patch, what I have done is these machines that are set up from here and beyond, they're going to use App Auto Patch. Maybe you do a phased in approach. That's actually what I'm going to do with App Auto Patch. My idea is the ones that have come in over the summer, they're already configured with App Auto Patch. but it's something that I want to use across our fleet. So I'm going to wait till the fall semester, right before it begins. I'll send my quarterly newsletter that says, hey, here's some things that we worked on over the summer. Heads up, you've got a Mac already in use. You're going to see this little pop-up from App Auto Patch instead, starting on this date, TBD. Along those lines, consider version control, document how things were changed. If you're using a script that works a little bit differently as you update it, make sure you have some kind of version control just in case you need to revert back to a different version. Also with the this point forward versus retroactive assignment, make sure that you have some kind of identifier. When did this point forward start? So in our MDM, we use device groups, and I generally will name the device group based upon a big change. I have figured finally that it's good to use the date to say, July 2024 App Auto Patch, and that way that gives me a time frame as well as the big change that was implemented to that device group. Something else. If your MDM uses device groups, what was it, kanji with the new flow thing that is amazing. Well, I don't use kanji. I don't have that. But make sure your logic is sound. So with device groups, if you've got a machine in one group, but it's in another group as well, will that conflict? Which thing is going to get applied? Maybe you want multiple things to happen, so it's in multiple device groups. Do you have the machine in a subgroup? I've got some where settings are applied to the top level group, but devices in a subgroup are excluded from those settings. The logic can be a little tricky, so test that while you're testing the changes themselves. Make sure that what you have that you're going to push out, if it's retroactive, make sure that it will behave as desired for those other groups, if the machine happens to be in other groups. Something else, show yourself some grace, because you're going to get it wrong. No matter what, something's going to happen. It's okay. It's okay. We're all just trying to figure it out. Not just the adminning thing, but life as a whole, right? We're just trying to figure it out. Allow yourself to make mistakes. See what you can learn from them. And sometimes that might mean that you reflect on old interactions, and not only do you show yourself some grace, but maybe you need to show some grace to those who bristled against you in the past. So, this is our schedule, what works for us, what I've come up with. We generally have 3 months where we discover and test things. And then the fourth month, we implement. That fourth month begins a new cycle of discover and test and implement the next. And then being a university, December is like 2 weeks long for us, which is awesome. So it doesn't really count as a full month, but we give ourselves a little extra time there and implement for the new semester. All right, now timeline. All the things that I've talked about, here's how or when we did them. Starting with August 2019, my position. It was October when Catalina was released. I was still a babe and learning things. So we weren't ready to support it at that time. It was actually January of 2020 when I had got my feet wet enough to support Catalina. In March, right before the shutdown, we got our MDM synced up with our local AD server to pull in users and groups. And with that, we were able to start associating machines with their primary user. Move on to May. We were now well into the pandemic. Everybody was working at home. I decided to shut down the Monkey server. It had only been set up for on-prem access, so the computers just weren't able to check in and get any updates. And there was just a handful of apps at the time that we were managing anyway, so I found it a better use of my time to turn off the server. And actually what I did at that point, our MDM has a place where you can go in and put in, software packages that you can push to machines by URL. So once a week, I'd go in and look for Chrome's latest update, copy the URL to download it, and paste it into the line in the MDM that said, what app do you want to install? And then I would save it and push the new version out to the users. I did that for a while. July, I mentioned this before, July, that's when our university store was transferred over, and all new Apple devices were automatically added to our MDM from then on. November is when Big Sur was released, and I got a little bit better for supporting at that point. It was just mid-December, right before we shut down for the break, that I had a Mac deploy stick image ready with Big Sur on it. All right, now moving into 2021, you may notice this timeline is a little bit of a lie. I don't have the thing spaced out equally. So mid-December of 2020 to June of 2021, there's a big gap there time-wise. Upgrades and replacements conversations begin. So much of the first half of 2021, my area, I don't know if consolidated is the right word, but came together with another area. We got to keep all of our people, which was fantastic, but it was kind of a realization that there were similar services being offered, and so we became one unit, and we had a lot of discussions and relationship building during that time. And one of the things that we discussed during that time was taking a look at our old computers, figuring out which ones need to get off of our network. And so, yeah, that's June when those discussions started, and we've since had a recurring annual project to visit those machines. And every year when support is dropped, we contact our users ahead of time to say it's time to replace it, otherwise it's not going to have access after this date. August 2021, that is when switch over to Kerberos local accounts, no longer binding to AD, right? The signs were written well in advance that you shouldn't bind to AD unless you have a lab, in which case it's probably okay, even still. But we finally got the picture in 2021 that we need to get off of binding. And there's still a few out there that was a this point forward application. There's still a few out there that are still bound to AD from 4 years ago or so, but we'll worry about them. They're doing fine. They're all right. September, implementing OneDrive, the Mac App Store version, backing up all the things. That's also when we put the support app out there. And support app was a retroactive assignment. It's a very simple thing. Like I said, it just lives in the tray, not a big change. And that way, most of our users actually didn't even realize it was there. But our help desk knew. And so whenever they get those calls, they can have them click the thing that shows the things. October 2021, that's when I published the first newsletter to our user community. It was also when Monterey was released, and we had moved off of MDS at that point, so we were ready essentially day one. The summer was spent testing the beta of Monterey, and we were ready to go to support it on day one. 2022 to current. March was the docutil script that executes from the MDM at first login. That's the MVD bent set doc that I mentioned before. August, privileges and privileges demoter, as well as file vault, and those were all this point forward implementations. October was Ventura's release. November, Swift Dialog and Installamator. That's when we implemented them. I had spent quite a bit of the time of the summer testing it, and it was November when I actually retroactively implemented it. Time passes, April 2023. That was when I switched over to the OneDrive with known folder mode built in. May, renew. Yeah, that's the one that pops up and says, it's been a while since you've restarted your computer, you should do it now. That was retroactive, nice updater, the one that tells you when an update's available and you need to install it. That was this point forward initially and phased in over time. We targeted the new setups as well as the machines that were running an old OS but could run something newer. We pushed Nice Updater to them, and now we're at the point where the entire fleet has it on it. September was Sonoma's release. Not much happened for us. October, so just this last October. This is what I've kind of been working on for the last semester, 2 semesters now. The security and compliance training from Apple, as well as managed Apple IDs or Apple accounts now, right? Testing both of those. And in March earlier this year, that's when I came across App Auto Patch and started testing it. And it is this summer when all of those things are getting implemented. Security and compliance, still working on it. I've got some of the things that test or check for settings there, but have not deployed it yet to our fleet. Apple IDs, it was coincidentally July 8th when I was flying out here that it was the end of our 60-day grace period. So just a little bit of an aside, when I clicked the button to see how many user accounts were in conflict, we're an EDU, and we've been around for a long time, and there was a long period where your school account was your only email account. So we had 8,504 user names in conflict. It was a bit of a, but we clicked it because we knew, or I pushed that it's something that should happen, it needs to happen. And thankfully, again, partnering with our help desk, we now call it a service desk, partnering with them, I made them well aware that there's a big unknown of how many folks will actually contact us. But overall, it seemed to go okay. There were a little more than 100 people that contacted the service desk asking about it. I think that's pretty good ratio there. And that's it, y'all. We are up to speed with how we've done things. So, yeah, there's the QR code that links to the slides, and then, of course, the feedback survey is there. Type it in manually or use the code, doesn't matter, whatever. Those should be all the links that I made mention of. So, we got 13 minutes. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to know about? All right. Oh, sorry. So sorry. Thank you.
With your newsletter and your other communications with the users, what's your feeling as to how much that actually gets read? We find that our communications, we can send out all we want to, and a lot of people just don't pay attention. So how do you get better uptake on that?
You know, I think it's actually just my situation. It works for us. That was a big concern of mine. Like, I'm putting in all this information, devoting so much time to this details. Is it even going to get read? But I tell you, it's been awesome. People, as I, encounter them like out at the store or around campus or anything like that, they're like, "I love your newsletter. I read it." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." I think it's the community, really. It may not make sense for your community. I mean, and that is something else. As a whole, our department, IT area, we don't want to send like a mass email to every employee because we know it's going to get skipped, sent straight to trash. I target our Mac users specifically. We've got, I think it's like 400, 450, something like that, Mac users that I email. And I always do it as a BCC for what that's worth, just so there's hopefully a little bit of privacy there, and they feel like it's sent to them. So I try to keep that in mind of making it personal, or make it feel personal, hopefully. So.
A reasonably good throw. My question was about the transition you guys went from IT-based, for the data backups, for the data transfers from old laptops to new laptops. You went from an IT-focused, well, IT helping the individual do it, or probably doing it directly, to them having to now take care of that themselves. How did you handle that? How did you handle kickback from the users, the cultural change there?
I didn't see a kickback, thankfully. And it was, I don't know if phased in is right, maybe so. It wasn't anything that we announced like, this point forward, you have to do it yourself. But it was, as the machines came to us, we were resetting them up or setting up the new one or something. It was saying, okay, we've done this data transfer, and OneDrive is ready for you now to make use of it. From now on, we're not going to handle the data transfer. So we recommend using OneDrive, but if not, use a time machine, use Dropbox, whatever you want, but OneDrive is what we will support. So.
And your OneDrive backs their stuff up automatically, or they're dragging and dropping into OneDrive?
Automatically, using the KFM mode. So yeah, whatever they have in desktop and documents actually exists in OneDrive. The OneDrive with KFM mode, it's slick. If you haven't used it yet, and you are a OneDrive shop, I recommend setting up that test version, or do a test version that uses that one. It's very handy. Like it is seamless to the user. If they're familiar with saving stuff to the desktop, they will continue saving stuff to the desktop. It's just that little interaction at first where they have to log into OneDrive, and it will take care of it from then on.
So one last follow-up question with that then. Do you have quotas set up in OneDrive? How do you handle the users that have 200-300 gigs of data?
We are an EDU, and Microsoft is very kind to us. I mean, we pay for it, for sure, but our agreement includes at least 1 terabyte per user. So that hasn't been much of an issue. We've got a few folks that have, oh gosh, one person in particular I think has like 10 terabytes photos, right? That our big photo department, and so it's like, you know what, you're going to need not just a time machine, but you're going to need your own like NAS server or something for that much data. That's not something that we'd be able to do anyway. So, and thankfully that person is very acclimated to doing that themselves anyway. So. Oh, yeah.
Getting out.
Hi. In regards to the Kerberos extension, and more specifically the configuration by the end user having them sign in that, do you have any issues with users not configuring it and devices going out with the extension installed but not configured?
I don't think so. I would say the caveat, like our machines, again, I have it as a device group, the ones that are Kerberos, so they are identified by that way. If they're in this group, they've got it, I know for certain. There are a few folks, yeah, that are remote workers, and our recommendation for them, if they want to have their password sync with their account, connect to the VPN, so it will then see our local AD and the extension will pop up the login prompt for them. But generally, most of our folks live nearby, if not in town. They often will still be within driving distance, and so we'll help them kind of get things set up initially. And that's one of the things, is to make sure Kerberos pops up. I will say that we've had, I think three people, for whatever reason, the Kerberos thing will pop up, they'll plug in their credentials, and it won't sync. It will pop up again and again. So I've had to make exceptions for them, to exclude them from that assignment. And I've told them, your password right now is what your WKU account password is, but if you change that WKU password, it's going to be the old one still for the computer itself. And so they've been aware of that kind of issue. It actually would sync the password, but it would frequently pop up to say it's been changed, or it needs to resync essentially.
So is it optional? You're using it optionally then, the Kerberos extension, or is it a requirement that it's signed into?
I don't have a hard requirement, but it's kind of an assumption, like you're here, you're going to do the thing.
Yeah.
If there's an oddity that comes up, then we'll make an exemption for it. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we are at 3 minutes. I think we're probably good enough to close it out. I will say, over here, I've got a bag of peppermints. I personally like having something to kind of freshen my breath, especially after breakfast, right? But you're welcome to grab a handful. I'm packing up and heading out here in a few moments, so it's gonna sit beside me in the car ride to the airport, and I don't want to eat all those peppermints, but I probably would. So please take some with you if you so desire. They're there for you. So thank you all. Thank you.